The Eminence in Shadow is a isekai adventure fantasy series that tries to soften its somewhat morally gray main character with a bit of comedy. Does it succeed, and just does it get the balance quite right? Well, that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about in this review of volume number 1 of The Eminence in Shadow. This one written by Daisuke Aizawa with illustrations by Touzai. It's released officially in English by Yen On with a translation by Kristi Fernandez. If you want to pick up your own copy of this one, I'll have a link in the description down below. And if you want to check out some other light novels that are similar to this one, I'll have a couple of recommendations at the end of the video. The Eminence in Shadow is about our main character, Sid. Well, he's not Sid initially. Initially, he is just a normal young adult in modern-day Japan, and he's kind of been in love with this idea since he was a child of being a shadow master. Basically, a person who manipulates the world from the shadows. Not a hero who, is out in the public eye and everybody knows that he's a hero and all. No. The kind of guy that, manipulates the way that the world works quietly. That nobody really knows that it's him until the big reveal, until the end. Well, he's been in love with this idea so much that he has been training like crazy to accomplish it. And then one day, after a particularly grueling training session that leaves him perhaps not entirely in control of his faculties, he meets the business end of a truck and, because it's a light novel, we all know where this is going. He's reincarnated in a new world with all of his memories still intact. He realizes, though, this new world presents some pretty good opportunities, seeing as how it's a fantasy-type world with magic, a Victorian sort of era in terms of its technology levels, which means it's a lot easier to become a master operating from the shadows. In fact, he starts this pretty early as a kid. He's already starting to kill bandits as a way of mastering his magic and his fighting prowess. In the midst of all this, he comes upon a person that is referred to as the possessed. These poor unfortunate souls are individuals who have had their mana go completely out of control and have basically been turned into a puddle of pulsating fleshy goo. Yeah, it's delish. In any case, these people are obviously shunned by everybody who knows them. They're thrown out and basically their existence erased. And the church, if they gets a hold of them, destroys them. Well, Sid decides, this person's pretty much dead anyway. I'm going to do a little bit of mana exploration with this thing and see how much magic I can pour into it and maybe try this and try that, because, hey, Sid's all about trying to get more powerful, and if he can experiment on someone other than himself, well, even better. In doing so, he actually manages to reverse the whole process and return this pile of fleshy goo to a young elf girl. Well, she's basically an orphan. Nobody wants her because they threw her out. It's a perfect time to recruit his first member for his shadowy organization, the Shadow Garden. And he names her Alpha. And he tells Alpha the reason Shadow Garden exists, the reason they're training to fight and everything else, is to take down the cult of Diablos, a evil cult that has weaseled its way into every facet of society and is working towards the revival of the evil god Diablos. Of course, Alpha completely believes this. Sid has totally made it up. He's just based it on a bunch of legends and myths and stuff that he has read about this world. He's just a complete chuny that wants to have a really cool backstory to his secret shadowy organization. However, little does Sid know that the cult of Diablos is a real thing, and they have, in fact, weaseled their way into every facet of society, and pretty shortly his Shadow Garden's going to be a lot bigger and a lot stronger than even he realizes, and they're going to go all out toe-to-toe in war against the cult. Now, I said at the beginning that Eminence in Shadow is really an action, adventure, fantasy type thing. Well, not so much even adventure, more action. There's pretty much 3 sections to the book, and each one of them increases basically the stakes and the size of battle that the Shadow Garden finds themselves in against the Cult of Diablos. It's actually a really good book in this way. I found the pacing was just great. It is obviously with increasing stakes at every moment, with sort of a big sort of event happening every third of the book. It really just keeps on chugging. There's not really a lot of slow points in this book. Now, it is a comedy because there is the whole joke that Sid has no idea that A, the whole Cult of Diablos thing was absolutely true, and B, that, well, he's been trying to pretend to have a normal life, because what's the point of the chuny aesthetic of being a shadow master if A, either everybody knows, or B, you disappear from life and everybody wonders what happened to that guy? No. The true aesthetic, the true chuny goal is to have everyone be surprised when it's revealed that you are in fact the Shadow Master, which means you have to have a very convincing normie type of life. And so Sid is really kind of pursuing that and focusing a lot of his energy on that, while Alpha and a number of other girls that they have rescued over the years, well, they're just taking the whole mission to heart, and they are expanding Shadow Garden beyond Sid's, well, frankly, beyond his dreams, to be quite honest. And so this is kind of the running joke throughout the book. It's especially prevalent early on, where Sid actually thinks that the girls refer to bandit groups that they're taking down as cultists, because he's like, these girls, they're so sweet. They know it's BS. They know that, but they're just doing it anyway because they're being nice to me. How cute is that? Yeah, no, it's a real thing. They're actually cultists. Yeah, it's a running gag throughout the whole thing. And of course there are the slapsticky type gags throughout the book where Sid is doing his best to try and be normal, which of course fails epically because he's pretty much anything but normal. Now, while there are definitely some funny moments in this book, I'm not saying that whatsoever, it felt to me more like the author was a lot more interested in the action side of things, that he really did want to write a book about this kick-ass Shadow Master and his shadowy organization fighting against demonic cults in this fantasy setting. But he also kind of realized that Sid would be a completely unrelatable dick if there wasn't some comedy element to this. Like I said, right in the beginning, I mean, Sid's like, I think 8 when this starts, and he's already killing bandits en masse just to, flex and to build up his fighting skills and his magic use and everything else. He'd be really, really kind of unlikable in this very morally gray character. I mean, he's kind of morally gray as it is, but if it weren't for the comedy side, if it weren't for the chuny aesthetic that this guy has, I could see this being one of those really grim, dark, not as much fun type books. And there is also moments throughout the book where Sid makes decisions that you realize he's not completely irredeemable, that, he does have kind of an understanding about people, and he does have some empathy for people who deserve it. God help you if you don't deserve it, though, because Sid's going to put you down and he's not going to give 2 craps about it. Now, aside from the Shadow Garden maidens as it is, all kind of, worshipping Sid and seeing him as their savior and the mastermind behind their organization and yada, 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 we do also have other females introduced into this story. There's, of course, an older sister, because there should always be an older sister for whatever reason. We have a very tsundere princess. We have a very nervous, skittish researcher girl. And then we have the very strong and confident swordswoman. And they all kind of play their roles in each of the parts of the book. And most of them kind of exist to, at some point, push Sid into action with the Shadow Garden. And really, after they've served their purpose, they kind of get shoved into the background. We don't hear a whole lot from them. They don't really become all that important anymore. However, I will say that the author does a pretty outstanding thing of taking a purely ecchi fetish moment about thongs and cute butts I know. And making it an almost touching moment about sisters rediscovering their bond. I gotta give props to that. That doesn't happen often in light novels, and he actually pulled it off, that he turned this pure fan service moment into an actual character building moment. Overall, though, obviously, these secondary characters, not built up. Shadow Garden, there's quite a number of them. Now, the book does a good job, I would say, of introducing, sort of focusing on one or two at a time and building up a little bit of a backstory for them. Actually, the last one that we meet in this volume, New, it's kind of funny because she's the new girl, but anyway, she, I would say, probably gets some of the best backstory building of all of them. All the rest kind of just eventually blend into the background as being the members of Shadow Garden. So as I said, not a lot of building up of secondary characters, a little bit here and there, but they're all just kind of window dressing in Sid's world. To be honest, the Chuni thing could be actually kind of annoying, but I think it kind of works because when Sid is the Shadow, or just Shadow, takes on the persona of the head of Shadow Garden, he is actually quite capable. He is able to make plans. He is able to execute things. He is able to recognize the strengths and weaknesses of foes. As I said, if it weren't for the Chuni aesthetic, I think Sid would be just too perfect, too unobtainable, and the book would miss out on some good sort of character building beats and actually some good world building beats because of Sid's ignorance about the cult of Diablos being real, and because he's gone to school, because he has to maintain that normie thing. We do actually get some world building elements in the book that we might not otherwise get. The world building is, I would not say extensive in this first volume, although there are certainly a lot of little drops of hints here and there that there's a lot more to the possessed than what has been let on. We do kind of wonder, is the church actually being sincere about what it's doing with the possessed? What's its role in all of this? The cult has weaseled its way into some very high-end areas within society, so we kind of wonder what's the background there. This first volume really actually was a lot of fun to read. As I said, it's got a really brisk pace, and because there's some laughs interspersed, it never feels too dark, too foreboding. Sid never feels completely unapproachable as a character. As I said, even the Shadow Garden, Alpha and all of them, we don't see them a whole lot, and it's probably a good thing because they seem incredibly capable to the point where they're almost not relatable anymore. Except for Beta, who has a mad crush on Sid and has decided to chronicle all of his adventures for time in memoriam, which is kind of cute because she keeps a little binder stuck in her while, Anyway, she keeps a little book on her so that she can keep notes, and at the end of the book there's actually some of her entries, and you can just see how outlandish they are. Now, just to talk a little bit about the book itself, because it is a brand new Volume 1, new series, and because it's gotten a special treatment from Yen. In fact, it's gotten a treatment that's similar to a book that I'm going to recommend, similar to this one. It's a hardcover, and the front cover is the slipcover, and it's just a plain black with the spine with the name on it. And all in all, it is a nice package. I'm not too sure how they decide what gets done in hardcover, what gets done in soft cover, but I mean you can see sort of how it starts to open, and you've got I love how this sums the whole thing up. The cult of Diablos, that's our enemy. And then down at the bottom it says, well, it's not like they actually exist. The artwork is pretty cool. That's sort of the color spread. That's the main players in the Shadow Garden. Mostly it is all just black and white beyond the first color photos. It's not like, say, Overlord, where it has the color chapter intro pages. However, it does have sort of like when you go into a new section, it has these like all black kind of stylized sort of new chapter headers, which again, you know what? It's a nice package all in all. I thought the book was well done in that way, but again, I'm not too sure what it is that makes Yenon decide what gets a hardcover and what doesn't. I don't think this series was as huge a release. It definitely is really pretty, and I like the artwork, and I think it's nice that they've done it like this. But yeah, I don't know why they make that decision. Maybe it's a contract thing. I don't know. If you're watching this from Yen and you want to comment, I'd be happy to hear about it. So overall, the Eminence in Shadow was, pretty enjoyable. I will say that the 3 sections of the book, there was a little bit of repetition, a little bit of the whole maiden in distress thing that was kind of a bit same, but because the stakes kept getting bigger and because there were other threats going on outside of just that immediate thing, it still managed to not feel stale. It definitely is something that if they kept doing that in the same direction in all the future volumes, I could see it becoming a problem. Although there is sort of a big change up of things at the end of this book that I won't spoil that do certainly suggest that the series could take a slightly different track in the future volumes. And again, if you're looking into this one and you're thinking it's going to be like a Konosuba level comedy, it most certainly is not. As I've said a few times, definitely this one I think is a lot more action-based. However, the comedy is there just to try and soften the whole thing and make it a little bit more fun as you go along. In this video, I want to say a special thanks to Mitchell Von Regen, Kyle Block, Yun, Jonathan McCabe, and Renzaz for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who help to keep the channel running and help me to keep all of my other light novel related projects like the Light Novel Podcast and EnglishLightNovels.com up and running so that they can help and contribute to the growth of the community. So hey, if the Eminence in Shadow sounds like kind of up your alley, one of the books that I've already mentioned that you should check out is Overlord. This one from Yen On as well, and it is also an isekai, most definitely a action fantasy, slight bits of horror to it, but in the earlier books it has a very similar feel. The main character has this organization that he kind of feels like he doesn't quite have as much control over it as what he thinks. He's kind of nervous about being in control of it. Meanwhile, his followers think his word is like God, and they have gone out and started to do things and manipulate things in ways that are even beyond the main character's plans. It has its moments of comedy as well, which again I think is meant to kind of soften things a bit because there are definitely some horrific bits. It is different in the fact that the main character is actually an undead, and actually his whole group are all monsters and demons and such. So it does end up having a very different feel than I would say this book does, but at the same time, I just couldn't help comparing them a bit, especially their first volumes. There just seemed to be a lot that was very similar. Sid's trying to have this life away from the Shadow Garden. You have Ainz in Overlord. He's trying to establish a hero persona so he can be in the normal world away from his group, from Nazarick. So there are some parallels here, so definitely might want to check that one out. Another title that you might want to check out if you're into sort of the whole secret organizations and all this kind of stuff, and I'm actually going to read it because it's a long title. There was no secret evil fighting organization. Seriously? So I made one myself. This one's kind of cool. It's about a main character who discovers they have superpowers, and they kind of get to this point where they're like, there's no reason for me to use the powers. Like, I need supervillains. I need, someone to be an opponent. I need a reason to flex my powers. And so they make one themselves. They make an organization themselves. I think there's only 2 volumes. It's out from J Novel Club, so you might want to check that one out. I haven't had a chance to check it out myself yet, but I have heard from quite a number of people that it was pretty decent. So if you're looking for secret organizations and such, that might be one to take a look at. And if you like the artwork by Touzai, you might want to check out Saving 80,000 Gold in Another World for My Retirement. It's a Funa title, and it's by Soul Press is releasing this one. They're actually just about to release the 2nd volume of it. Story-wise, nothing like The Shadow and Eminence, but again, if you want some more artwork from Touzai, then you can check that one out as well. So that's my review of The Eminence in Shadow. If you're looking for a fast-paced little action fantasy type title, it's not a bad one to take a look at. And in any case, I'm going to leave that behind and do something completely different with my next review. Going to get a little bit of new Nishio Ishin action, and that's going to be volume number 1 of the Pretty Boy Detective Club, The Dark Star That Shines for You Alone. That'll be in my next review. In the meantime, thanks for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.